I'll be laughing through the years on the cold days.
Oh, hello there. Hardly noticed you there. Would you sneak in? Anyways, I'll smoke that later. So you're here for a drum lesson. You want to learn how to play drums like Zach Hill. I'm assuming that's why you're here. Unless you just stumbled down some weird YouTube algorithm and you ended up here, you were looking for memes, okay? You were looking for Death Grips memes, and you ended up freaking stumbling into my vicinity. I don't know how you got here. So I'm just going to go on the assumption that you want to learn how to play like Zach Hill. So let's move forward, okay? Shall we? We shall. First things first, okay? We're not going to do the musical hokey pokey. I'm not going to say your right hand does this, your left hand does this. I'm not going to tell you how to play a specific Zach Hill drum beat, okay? So if you want to learn how to play the Republic of Rough and Ready, okay? If you want to learn how to play 1-800-GHOST Dance, go listen to the albums, go type it into YouTube. There's someone else who can teach you that. I'm going to teach you in this lesson the concepts. I'm going to teach you the things that other teachers aren't going to teach you, okay? Because I could teach you a specific beat to play, but you're not going to internalize it. You're not going to internalize anything beyond that beat. So I'm going to try to teach you the core concepts, okay? The musical underlying structure so that you can create your own Zach Hill beats, okay? Because you don't want to copy him. You don't want to do exactly what he did. You want to be able to emulate him, make your own beats up, make your own rhythms, and sound like him without being an exact carbon copy. So I'm going to teach you how to sound like him, okay? So if that interests you, watch on. If that doesn't interest you, then why are you still here? Let's get a couple of key things out of the way, real quick, okay? So I'm going to break this into two sections, two main sections. You got technique, and then you got underlying concepts. Let's start first with technique. It's quick. I'll get it out of the way. You guys should know these basics, okay? If you want to play like Zach, you got to learn the molar technique. Number one. It's molar, not molar as in your tooth. It's M-O-E-L-L-E-R. The molar technique. Go look this up on YouTube. I'm not going to give you an hour-long lecture on this, okay? But just to summarize, it's this, okay? It's this wave. It's the wave motion you have through your hands, okay? You don't strike the drums like, you're not going to strike it like this, okay? You're going to have this natural wave that moves all the way down your hand, all the way down your arm, okay? And as the motion gets faster and it gets quieter and faster, the motion minimizes from that to more of a this kind of a thing, where it's more just in your wrist, okay? You have to learn that. You're never going to be able to play at breakneck speeds without injuring yourself in the long run without doing that kind of thing, okay? So go learn the molar technique. And another, okay, if some of you are saying, I don't want to do that, okay? Let me give you some advice here. It's not just about not injuring yourself. Learning the molar technique will immediately make you play faster. You will play faster. Why? Because with the molar technique, you learn how to get multiple bounces and multiple strokes out of one motion. So by doing this kind of a thing, one motion, normally you would just get a da, da. I can get 3, 4, 5 strokes out of that one motion, okay? So I recommend you go look Jim Chapin. Jim, J-I-M-C-H-A-P-I-N. Jim Chapin. Go look him up on YouTube. It's fantastic. He's the OG, old school guy who teaches the molar better than anyone, realistically. So go learn molar from Jim Chapin, okay? Okay, number 2 in the technique realm. Foot technique. So everyone's going to talk about his fast doubles, okay? We all know, and you can get into the argument of whether it's heel-toe, or it's toe-heel, or it's a slide technique. That stuff doesn't matter. The foot technique doesn't matter if you do it exactly like him. What matters is that you can play the vocabulary that he plays, okay? So everyone focuses on doubles, but I think the more important part of Zach's sound is singles and doubles combinations. So the two most common ones that he always plays over and over again is a single and then a double. Da-da-da, da-da-da. So a single and then a double. Da-da-da, da-da-da. Or reverse it, a double followed by a single. Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. And he'll play this so fast that a lot of times people will think he's playing a triplet, when in reality, he doesn't actually play triplets like Jojo Mayer does. He plays, it's more of a single and a double. Da-da-da, 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 da-da. And then it ends up blurring into a kind of a triplet whenever you play it faster. So don't just focus on the doubles. You got to know those two things, okay? And I'm not going to argue about the specific technique you need to use it. It's all out there. It's all on YouTube. You can find it everywhere. The main thing is don't just focus on doubles. Focus on incorporating singles with doubles, because that's the real Zach Hill sound. It's not just doubles, okay? Okay, another real quick one here, number 3 in the technique. You got to learn how to play rim shots without injuring yourself, okay? Because a key to the Zach Hill snare sound is, he's playing on a snare that's tuned up really high, but it's almost exclusively rim shots. He plays rim shots constantly. So if you don't know what a rim shot is, okay, it's when you strike the center of the drum and the edge of the rim at the same time. You can also do it far out, where you're getting more of a high-pitched timbale kind of a sound, but it's still the key. It's the same concept, okay? But here's the problem. A lot of beginning drummers, whenever you're playing your rim shots, you're really slamming it down on there and you're clenching up. So the real correct way to play a rim shot is when you come down, you basically, as you're at the moment of where you're striking, you're releasing the tension in your hands. You're not gripping. You're not gripping on it while you're hitting it. You're releasing the tension, and instead of you slamming it down, it's more of a drop. It's more you're dropping the stick down, and at that last moment, you're releasing the tension on your fingers and your hands, and you're letting the stick absorb the impact. You're not clenching onto it, because if you clench onto the stick, whenever you slam it down, all that impact goes up through your hand, okay? Or it goes up through your hand and your arm and all that. And you do that for 40 years, you're going to destroy your body. Now, there's a story about Zach, and I don't know if it's true or not, but about how that he fractured his arm playing drums. Now, to me, what that says is whenever he did that, he didn't have good technique. There is no way you should ever fracture your arm playing your drums. It's not because he plays so fast and he plays so crazy hard. No. If that's true and he actually did fracture his arm playing drums, it's because he has bad technique. Just purely and simple. Now, I think his technique has improved a lot over the years, but you should never, ever break your arm playing drums. There are drummers that play way louder than Zach does, way faster than Zach does, move around the kit more, and are twice his age, that have never injured themselves, never broken a bone, and are still playing healthy, 30 years beyond him. So, you got to learn how to play rim shots without clenching up, and you also got to learn how to play, if you want to play loud like he does, you're not smashing into the cymbals. It's the same thing. You got to learn how to release that tension in your fingers and your hands whenever you strike the drums, whenever you strike the cymbals. Same thing. Whenever you strike the drum, you got to learn how to play out of the drum. So you're not even if you have a molar but you're tight and you're digging into the drum, you got to learn how to let that stick rebound off the drum, because what it's doing is all that tension that you're throwing down into it is coming up. And so the tension is going back into the stick, and that energy is going back into the stick instead of going into your hands and into your arms, which will damage you in the long run, okay? If you or a loved one would like to research specifically how to relieve tension during drumming, please research the Gladstone technique. That's Gladstone, Gladstone, Gladstone technique. This is the most efficient way to teach you how to relieve tension and relieve stress while you're playing. So that's pretty much a wrap on the technique. Now let's move on to the more creative things, the things that I think really, really make Zach original and unique. Okay, so this is the more conceptual side of the lesson right here. Let's talk about melodic phrasing. I think this is the key to Zach's sound, more specifically back in the day. Because to be honest, to be completely honest with you guys, I like Zach's playing style much better back in the day. You can call me an old boomer, I don't really care. Like, hella Hold Your Horses and The Devil Isn't Red. Those are my two favorite things he's ever done, okay? And if you haven't listened to those, go Hold Your Horses. It's not horses like plural horses, it's Hold Your Horse, I-S, is, okay? And The Devil Isn't Red. It's the first two Hella records. Both of those records they're really, really a great example of basically the way he would develop phrases, the way he would develop compositions and orchestrations. And I feel like as he got later on in his career, he focused way more on just shredding and chops, and where he would play the same licks over and over and over again, like the molar triplets, molar quadruplets, over and over again, ad nauseum. And when I listen to his solos now, after 15, 20 seconds, I check out because it's boring to me. But the old stuff, he would create phrases and flowing melodic lines, much like a horn player or a guitar player. So what I recommend you to do is to go listen to those two old Hella records. And then I want you to do is, instead of, if you want to play like Zach, instead of saying, the way I'm going to play like Zach is I got to listen to drummers all the time, and I got to take inspiration from drummers, even if it's from Zach. Start listening to guitar players. Start listening to piano players, saxophone players, more melodic instruments, and then try to take the things that you hear that they're doing and incorporate that on the drums. Because I feel like that was a key part of Zach's style back in the day was... instead of making a traditional beat that had a groove to it, the phrases that he would create, the beats, they would have a flowing melody to them, almost like a horn line. A lot of the old stuff, it had more of that kind of a feel than the traditional when the levee breaks. Or you can go to Steve Gadd or any other kind of complicated grooves you want. They sound directly more like melodies. And the drums, it's not an inherently melodic instrument. But it's the phrasing, the rhythmic phrasing of it, okay? So if you want to create phrases that sound more like Zach Hill kind of a stuff, start thinking in your head while you're playing, instead of thinking about grooves. Of course, a lot of you guys know this. Instead of thinking about it in a traditional way, think about a horn line in your head or a guitar line in your head, and then try to sing that while you're playing. Okay, so what I mean by that is, sit down at your drums and think of something in your head that's a line that you make up yourself. It could be jazzy, it could be metal, it could be whatever you want. But think about a specific melody. Okay, and then try to play along with that in your head. Now, what I did is a little more jazzy because I'm more of a jazz drummer. I'm less of a rock drummer, a progressive metal drummer or something like that, or math rock, whatever you want to call it. So that's the kind of melodies that naturally come to my head. But use the melodies that naturally come to your head, or take a hella melody that you like and basically try to create your own rhythm to it. And that's the key to that old school sound that he had, is you're thinking melodically. You're not necessarily thinking rhythmically first and foremost, okay? So melodic phrasing, and another way to do this is make phrases that sound odd. This could be in odd times or whatever you want, but actually a lot of the old Hella stuff, a lot of it's in 4/4. It's phrased in a weird, unique way that it sounds like it's in an odd time, but it's not actually in an odd time. It'll resolve back on 4, and it's just the phrasing in between that sounds odd. So try to create phrases that sound a little odd, and a good way to do this is, whatever your natural inclination is, add 2 or 3 onto it. Okay, add 2 or 3 more beats at the end of it. Add 3/16 notes at the end of something that comes natural to you, and it'll automatically make it sound a little odd. Like that's the classic playing in 21/16 is just you play 4/4 and then you add 3/16 notes at the end of it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. That's 21/16. So just add 3 notes or 2 notes at the end of phrases that you already have. It'll automatically make them sound a little bit more off, a little bit more odd timing, okay? Orchestration. Now, orchestration, very simply put, means the way you move around your drum set while you're playing something. Because you could take a rudiment and you could play, let's just say a paradiddle. Right, left, right, left, left, and you could just play it on the snare drum. Or if you orchestrate that, you orchestrate it around your kit, there's an infinite number of ways that you could move around your kit in odd motions, odd whatever, and make it sound different even though you're playing the exact same pattern. So a huge key of Zach's sound and his style is that he has very unique, interesting, odd ways that he will orchestrate patterns. Now, if you were to take the same pattern that he was to play, or in a lot of those old Hella records, it's a lot of the same patterns over and over again. A lot of it is molar triplets, molar quadruplets, this right-left, kick, right-left, kick. It's a lot of these very, very simple things that he plays over and over again, but he orchestrates them around the kit in very, very unique ways that sound melodic. Okay, he's not just going to... A lot of the things, a lot of the classic stuff, I can hear it in my head and I can kind of almost sing it to myself because it's so melodic. It's not because the patterns he was playing are inherently melodic. They're not. A lot of them are very basic beginner drum beat kind of stuff. But he strings all these things together, these basic things, and then he moves around the drum set in very unique, creative ways, very original, creative ways, where then it ends up, this simple thing ends up sounding beautiful. It ends up sounding completely beautiful, completely unique, abstract. It sounds melodic, and it sounds dissonant at the same time. So, start thinking about that. Take patterns you already know, simple patterns, and start to think in your head and start to visualize, okay, how do I move this in odd and unique ways around the drum set to create interesting orchestrations on the drum set with these simple patterns that I already know? Because the old Zach Hill, or even the new Zach Hill stuff, it's all very simple patterns. And a lot of people get confused by it. A lot of beginning drummers, you hear him play this weird, odd thing, and you think, wow, it's so advanced, it's so crazy complex. Most of it isn't. Most of it is extremely basic, beginner level, first year drummer level things. But they're played at such a high tempo, and he strings so many of them together to where instead of normally you would just play 1 or 2 of them, he'll string like 8 of them together in these odd ways, and then it'll move around the drum set in an odd way, and then it ends up sounding like this weird abstract octopus movement type of thing that then sounds amazing and sounds truly original. So start focusing on orchestration. So to further expand on orchestration, let me tell you a couple ways to move around the drum set. Okay, I'm going to talk about a concept called harmonic motion. This is a concept from piano or sheet music composition. So this is very, very important, and it applies to the drum set. And Zach Hill does this all the time. And I guarantee you, most of you out there, you're only doing 2 of these. Okay, so there are 3 ways of harmonic motion, and there are only 3 ways. Now, usually whenever people say there's only 2 ways, it's all exaggerated. But with harmonic motion, there are literally only 3 ways to move, okay? So you have direct motion, contrary motion, and oblique motion. Direct, contrary, oblique. Okay, direct motion on the drums is where both your hands move together in the same direction. Doesn't matter which direction it is. Okay, even this kind of thing. This is all direct motion because your hands are moving in the same direction. Okay, even so, most drum fills, the classic, that's all direct motion. even if you go up like this and you do this and then you go here and all these odd ways, that's all direct motion, okay? Regardless of what you're doing. Now number 2, contrary motion, okay? So what is that? It's the opposite. You see Zach Hill does this all the time. He'll do this kind of a thing all the time with this kind of running motion, okay? So your arms are doing the opposite. Or you can go like this way, opposites. Or this way, crossovers. Crossover type of stuff, that's all contrary motion because you're going opposites. Here's another, let's make it a little bit more complicated. Circular contrary motion. Remember how we did circular direct motion? Now let's do circular contrary motion. So one hand is going counterclockwise, the other hand is going clockwise. Or vice versa, the other way. One hand is going clockwise, the other hand is going counterclockwise. Okay? So it becomes this kind of a thing. And of course, a lot of times this gets minimized. I'm exaggerating these motions so you can see them and so you can comprehend it and get it in. I'm exaggerating this, but a lot of times whenever you play faster, it minimizes to this kind of a thing. This like a more of a whipping kind of a thing, but you're still making this kind of circular thing. Even something like this, opposite, okay? Opposite. All this odd stuff. Opposite motions, contrary motion, okay? So the third one is oblique motion. So this is when one hand or one voice, your foot, whatever it is, stays the same and the other one moves. So a perfect example of that would be something like this, where let's say my left hand right here is playing on my snare continuously. And then my right hand moves to and from my rack tom. One hand is staying, and it doesn't have to be your left hand. It could be your right hand moving, okay? And it doesn't matter where it is. Anywhere in the drum kit, okay? You could even go back and forth. You could even go like this, where this is playing continuously. This moves, and then you could switch over to here, and then this plays continuously. It's still oblique motion, okay? It's the same thing. So those are the primary ways to move, and also I want you to think about it this way too. Before I'll explain how Zach uses this in a second, but I want to explain this real quick, which is, don't get locked in this idea that you have to just do one of these continuously. You have to go from a clean break from parallel motion to opposite motion, then oblique motion. Okay, these things can be played for a microsecond, and you could switch between any one of them in between. So you might play a second of parallel motion, and then you might do some opposite motion, some contrary motion, and then you might do a little bit of oblique motion, and then you might make your way back. So you can mix and match these anyway. Don't think of it as, in order to do oblique motion, you have to just continuously have your left hand on the snare. Movement, you can switch between these freely, okay? And it's the movement between these is where things actually really become interesting. So let me say this real quick to wrap up this little segment. Most of you out there, most drummers, you do parallel motion, direct this kind of thing where both hands are doing the same, and you do oblique motion, one hand staying the same, one hand moving. Most drummers don't do contrary motion, where your hands are doing opposites, because it feels awkward at first. It feels, especially when you start getting into this kind of a thing, it feels very, very awkward moving like this. But Zach does that kind of thing all the time. So focus on all these, be aware of all these, but most of you, what I recommend is start to internalize this idea and the motions associated with contrary motion, because odds are, if there's one of them out there that you're not doing, it's that. Or if you are doing it, you're probably doing it very little. Now watch the old live videos of Hella back in the day. Watch or listen to those first two records. a lot of the sounds that you're hearing in those is harmonic motion. Remember I was talking about orchestration in the previous segment, moving around the kit in interesting ways, taking a simple pattern and moving around in interesting ways. Zach will do that all the time, where he'll take a simple pattern and he will orchestrate it around the drum set using harmonic motion, and specifically using very odd, unique ways of harmonic motion. He'll do opposite motion. Okay, so now I want to go into a little bit of an extra Easter egg about harmonic motion. So we got 3 different kinds of harmonic motion, but let me talk about something that you can think about differently, but Zach Hill does this all the time, and it's shapes. Shape, I don't even know what you would even call this, other than shape movement. Okay, and what I mean by this is visualizing shapes moving between various instruments. So a perfect example of this is your crash cymbal, your floor tom, and your snare drum. For the way my kit is set up, it makes a triangle. It makes like a distinct triangle. Or my rack tom, my ride cymbal, my floor tom, and my snare makes a square. So it's almost like you have lines of movement. Okay, now I'm making parallel motion through those, but you could also make contrary motion moving in a square, or contrary motion moving in a triangle. You get what I'm saying? I see Zach does this all the time, especially if you watch the old videos of Hella, the live performances of them. He would pick very, very specific very angular routes across his drum set, and you'd see him move in these very, very weird angular ways. Not very smooth, not very this. And that kind of, that attributed to some of the sound, not the stiffness, but the directions, the paths he chose. Now, I don't know if this was some astrological straits. I don't know if that's where that comes from, or he was literally almost visualizing it like constellations or something like that, and like constellations and stars. But you can basically map shapes, and Mike Mangini's book talks about this a lot. About that thing of basically having shapes, like right here, a triangle. These 2 symbols and that, a triangle. So you have a triangle in this hand, and then you could have a square right here in this hand. So you got 2 shapes going on at once. So it's just another tip to visualize. If you're having a hard time saying, I can't figure out how to move around my drums in a new way, if you're locked into moving around your drums in a very specific, limiting way, it's a shape. Visualizing a shape on something is an easy way to make your body move in an unusual, strange way that's out of your comfort zone. Specifically because you don't have to think. You just look and you say, okay, this is a triangle right here. So then you're limited. And always let your ear be the guide. Whenever you try these, if something sounds terrible, scrap it. Move on to something else. If it sounds good to your ears, then it's good. It's like Jeff Ochiltree says, trust your ears, okay? If something sounds like shit, it's shit. If something sounds beautiful, or, and by beautiful I don't mean Mozart, it could be incredibly dissonant and chaotic and rock and roll, that could be beautiful too. But if something sounds beautiful to you, then it's right. Take it from your mind, put it in your bag of tricks, practice it, and then put it back into your playing, okay? And the only way to really, really do this is to just experiment, keep trying new things, and always let your ears be the guide, okay? Try new shapes. Try taking shapes, like I was saying, where you put it, you map a shape on your drums, and then try putting oblique motion through it. Try putting contrary motion through it. Try putting direct motion through it. Contrary. You do all kinds of odd things, but this is just it's just one more tool to help you move around your drum set, because Zach did that all the time. And it's so distinct that whenever I think of the old school Zach Hill, I can't, and I think of it from a theoretical kind of a view, music theory, I can't help but just see him moving in these odd shapes and then implying or overlaying weird harmonic motion in with that. It's so distinct in his style that whenever I think of what he looks like playing those things, it has its own look. not only does it have its own sound, but it's such a weird, unique way to move that it has its own visual. It has its own dance to it. Very much like jazz. Jazz has its own high level jazz has its own kind of a dance to it. His thing has this very an angular dance. Okay. Okay. The next section is unique compositions or unique compositional style at the drums. Now, I think Zach Hill's most interesting stuff was the older stuff. And the reason why I think that is because of the compositions were so interesting and unique, and they were slower. You just to be completely honest, it was slower, and so I think things had more of a groove to it. It had and I think that they spent more time back then too developing a lot of their ideas. It became less of just this complete chaos, which is its own thing in its own right, but it's not my favorite. And so the a lot of people who don't know much about Zach or beginner musicians, they think that it's like everything he plays is improv. And you think that probably because you've only seen his later stuff when it's just the full-on shred fest. I know you know what I'm talking about. Between the snare and the bass drum, just endlessly shredding, which that is improv. But that stuff is boring to me in that it doesn't have the same compositional weight, the same melodic structure to it. It doesn't have the same staying power to me where you can actually sing the beats back. Even if you can't sing them back perfect because it's so fast, they're very, very memorable and catchy in their own offbeat, avant-garde way. They're catchy. And so what I recommend if you wanna have more compositional style like Zach Hill, you got to basically think in terms of simplifying your melodies basically to a smaller core and then expanding outward from there. Okay, and let me give you a roundabout way of this. If all you do is just endlessly throw out new ideas endlessly, the ear has nothing to latch onto. Whereas the older stuff, what they would do is they would play very, very distinct things that would repeat several times, and then they would improvise within the framework of this idea that's repeating. So a good way to practice this would be find a kind of a beat that you like that sounds off of these tools that I've given you already. Create your own kind of melodic sounding idea that sounds vaguely Zach Hillish. And then spend a couple months practicing on that same beat and try to improvise within that beat rather than just endlessly playing. Now I'm playing quadruplets, now I'm playing triplets, now I'm going to doubles, now I'm just blast beating, now I'm going everywhere. Pick a kind of not a memorable beat in the traditional sense, but a memorable Zach Hill style beat. And then improvise within that, okay? So say, okay, now I'm gonna take that same beat, that same pattern. Now I'm gonna reorchestrate it around the drums. So before I was originally doing okay, then say, okay, I'm going out with my left hand, so then now try to maybe reverse it and play it this way. You get what I'm saying? Take these patterns, these melodies that you've created, and reorchestrate them around the drum set and create variation within that same idea instead of endlessly throwing in new ideas. Because it's much more interesting to hear someone riff on one idea and to endlessly shift that idea around, to make it a little shorter, a little longer, to expand it and to contract it, to vary maybe the tempo on it a little bit here and there, to move it around the drum set, to create different melodies within the same structure. And the reason it's more interesting is because your ear has something to latch onto, rather than just endlessly new things that you can't latch onto, and it kind of just goes in one ear and out the other ear after like 30 seconds. So try to focus on simplifying your melodies down to a center core, and then improvise within that. Okay, because I feel like jazz is a lot like that too, where it's not just endlessly new ideas. It's you're improvising within a framework, and that framework itself, it creates limitations, but the limitations create the overall interesting sound of it. Whereas if you have no limitations, it just basically becomes chaos, and it's almost impossible to really latch onto it or to really remember anything. Because if you're a big Zach Hill fan, you can probably think of specific beats in your head from classic Hella songs. But if you were to try to think of a lick in your head from him playing, the later style when he was just full on shredding endlessly for 30 minutes straight, you probably really can't think of many licks at all from there. Or there's nothing in it that you remember, because it's endlessly permutating. Whereas the other stuff, you can remember it because it was simpler and they repeated it. So I think this is important. It's important in a way, and it's not important in a way. It's important if you want that older Zach Hill sound, or if you want the newer Zach Hill sound, just completely throw all this advice out the window. So I really recommend you listen to Hold Your Horses from Hella and The Devil Isn't Red for prime examples of what I'm talking about. Of a little bit more stripped down style. It's a little easier to grasp. And I also think that it's actually, it sounds better, in my opinion, than a lot of the later stuff. So you can kind of study those things. Okay, you can kind of gain some interest off of that. Okay, so now let's talk about depth versus width. Zach Hill is the epitome of depth as a player and absolutely no width at all. And what I mean by this is width as a player means that you can play jazz, you can play funk, you can play country, you can play Afro-Cuban, you can play West African, okay? It's this variety in your vocabulary. And what depth what depth means is that in any one of those styles, you can go really, really, really deep in it and you've mastered that style. Whereas you can be really wide but be shallow in that you can play a little bit of everything, but you're mediocre at everything. You're a mediocre jazz player. You're a mediocre funk player. Whereas depth is you do one thing and you do it incredibly well. You do it so well that you're more interesting to listen to than someone who can do a little bit of everything in a mediocre way. Because I would rather listen to someone who only can play linear funk but is the best linear funk player in the world than listen to someone who can play everything but they can't really do anything at a really high level. And because let's be real about Zach Hill. Contrary to what a lot of people think, Zach Hill can do one thing. Okay, he can't play jazz. A lot of people say what he plays is jazz. It's not. Okay, he can't play jazz. He can't play linear funk. He can't play country. He can't do any of that stuff. He may be able to fake it to people that are not initiated into those styles, but if you're actually initiated into those, he cannot play jazz. He does one thing, and he does it at a superhuman level. And the one thing he does is he does Zach Hill. He does this whole own style, original thing that he invented, which is one of my favorite styles of all time. It's beautiful. It's incredibly deep. It's mysterious. It's powerful. It's incredibly over the top and virtuistic. It's amazing, but it's extremely narrow. Okay, so what I want you to realize is that you have to make a choice at this instrument. You really do. You can't have extreme width and extreme depth in every one of those things. You just can't. Because you even take a guy like Vinnie Colaiuta, who is widely considered the greatest drummer that ever lived. He can play everything, and he can play everything at a master level. Okay? But there's a guy in every one of those styles that he can play at a master level that does it way better than he does. So Vinnie Colaiuta is a master jazz player. But if you compare him to a guy like, just name anyone you want. And if you compare him to Tony Williams, or to Elvin Jones, or to Jeff Hamilton, or to Brian Blade, Vinny really isn't that good of a jazz player. Or the same thing, Vinny can play Afro-Cuban stuff at a master level. But if you compare Vinny to Horatio, or to Antonio Sanchez, Vinny Colaiuta sucks at Afro-Cuban compared to those people. It's a whole other level of mastery and depth that they have. And why is that? It's because they focused on a narrow thing. So if you want to play like Zach, you have to narrow your goals, but you have to make those goals extremely deep. And I think too many people overlook this now in the internet era when you're encouraged to learn everything. And online lessons feed into this because a new lesson comes out every week, so you feel like, oh, I got to learn this new lesson, even though you haven't even mastered the thing that they gave you last week. So what I recommend to you is focus on a couple of small things, practice them over and over for long periods of time, for months and months, and then move on to something else. Don't just do something for a week and then abandon it and then do something else for a week. That's not what Zach did. Zach has been doing the same thing for 20 years now. I think the first Hella record came out in like 2001, I think. It was somewhere around 2001. He's been doing the same thing for 20 years. And that's why he's amazing at it. That's why he is the absolute best. He's the king at sounding like Zach Hill, because it's all he does. Okay, so to conclude this lesson, let me just say, I could go on endlessly about Zach Hill. I'm a huge fanboy. I've loved him from the moment I very first heard him. Even though I just like his later stuff, that old stuff, it's so beautiful and so powerful, and still sounds fresh today. 20 years later, I listen to that. I listen to those first two Hella records, and they still sound innovative. They still sound futuristic. And to me, that's the key of great music. Is you listen to Tony Williams, the stuff he did. Like you listen to Four and More or Nefertiti with Miles Davis, and that stuff. What is that? 60 years later now, basically, it still sounds like it came from the future. Zach's music, that early Hella stuff, it still sounds like alien music from the future. It's amazing. Go listen to Hella, and just let me reiterate one more thing. Zach Hill is an incredibly creative drummer. Okay, that's the main thing throughout his entire discography, his entire style, is that he's not. I think he's been snubbed by the mainstream drum community for a long time, because I think it's ultimately because what he plays, the bass line, whenever you break it down to its fundamental elements, it is incredibly simplistic. It's the kind of licks you learn in your first 2 or 3 months of playing drums. I mean, your first 2 or 3 months of playing drums, you learn right, left, foot, foot. You learn or you learn all that stuff your first month or two of drums. And so people overlook Zach's playing because of this kind of snobbery of, oh, well, he can't actually play. He only plays these simple things. But I think if you can get past that, because I'm a guy who's a complete music snob and loves all that stuff, but at the same time, Zach Hill is just as important to me as Tony Williams is, because he does something so unique. He does it at such a high level, and ultimately, he made music. The Hella stuff, my favorite stuff from him, it's music at the end of the day. It's not shredding, it's not soloing, even though it is. That's why I like the old Hella stuff, and as he got later on, or just his old style, and as he went on, how I lost interest in it, because it wasn't music to me anymore. It was just gymnastics and acrobatics. Whereas that old stuff, it was real music. It was genuine music. His playing was musical. His playing was beautiful and melodic. Even it would be chaotic and dissonant and all this stuff. So I just want to say that is the thing to me that really stands out about Zach's playing. Is it's not technique, it's not the shredding, it's not all that stuff. It's creativity. It's distill his style, the old style, down to one thing. It's just raw, youthful energy, just balls to the wall, sweating your balls off on your drum set, just raw creativity and youth, just pouring out emotion onto an instrument, onto a new instrument. So no matter how old I get, no matter no matter how many new things I learn, I'll always go back to Zach Hill. I'll always go back to those old records, and they're always going to hold a place in my heart as part of my musical development. And I genuinely think a lot of snobby jazz drummers could learn a lot from Zach, especially those old records. So if you have a friend, whatever, that doesn't like him, that's a jazz snob, show them those first 2 Hella records, see if they like him, and if not, they're a lost cause, man.
This video was proudly sponsored by Skunkaviz.
I like your accent. Can you say again?
I'd start World War III for you, baby. I ain't playing. None of my feet are disgruntled artists.